Most conventional rehab for Achilles pain doesn't actually work for runners. And that's because running is different from other activities in a very specific way. So today, I'm going to tell you what the missing link is and what you need to do to fix it to get back to pain-free running. If you've had Achilles pain and you've been to any kind of rehab professional like a physiotherapist or a chiropractor, they've undoubtedly given you calf raises, heel drops, or eccentric loading exercises where you're putting a load on the tendon to try and get it to be stronger. Now, don't get me wrong, this is the right approach, but it doesn't get runners all the way back to pain-free running usually, and today we're going to talk about why. Now, let's start with where this originally came from. It was a orthopedic surgeon who had Achilles tendon pain. His name was Alfredson. This was back in the mid-90s, and he wanted to have surgery on the Achilles tendon because it wasn't getting better. He had pain, and what was prescribed, which was like rest and anti-inflammatories, it wasn't helping. It had been going on for a long time, but he was stuck. He couldn't get it better. So what he was actually doing was pursuing surgery. So he'd been to talk to his hospital and his other orthopedic colleagues about getting surgery on the tendon, but they said it wasn't bad enough to allocate those resources. So he was actually trying to make it worse. And so he started doing these eccentric heel drops. So if you imagine like a calf raise where you're standing on the edge of the step, but instead of pushing up, he would just do the down part. That was the eccentric part. So he would load up with really heavy weights. He would stand at the top on two legs, and then he'd lower down on one leg doing like this heel drop exercise. And he would do loads of them. So he would do between straight leg and bent leg, like 180 of these reps a day. And the idea was, I'm going to make this Achilles tendon so bad that, they'll have to operate on me. But much to his surprise and everybody else's, it actually got better. A few years later, he wrote a paper about that and started experimenting on people doing the same thing and found good results. And that sort of blossomed into this emerging field of research on Achilles tendon loading, specifically eccentric exercises. Over the last 20, 30 years, we've had loads of research on tendon loading, both in the Achilles and the patella and other tendons, and it has been found to be probably better than any other rehab strategy for reducing pain in tendons. We actually found that you don't need to isolate the eccentric part if you do the concentric part, which is where you push up onto your toes, and the eccentric part where you lower your heels down. That's actually more effective, but that's a story for another day. But we work with lots of runners who come to us having been to a physiotherapist or another very appropriate skilled professional, and they've done these protocols where they're doing lots of heavy, either eccentric or concentric and eccentric exercises. But when they try and run on their Achilles tendon, it still hurts. So I'm going to explain why. You got to bear with me through the numbers a little bit. But there's been some research into what kind of loads the Achilles tendon actually experiences during different activities. And that's because load is the key ingredient. When Alfredson originally was doing those heel drops, what he was doing was loading his Achilles tendon. He was loading it to try and make it worse, but the reason he made it better is because it got stronger. And that's the key ingredient that we found. When you apply heavy loads consistently to tendons, they get stronger and more resilient. They can then tolerate higher loads. And that's why the pain goes away, because they're now strong enough to do their job. And there's been a few different papers that have studied the magnitude of these loads in the Achilles tendon. For example, we have Josh Baxter's research from the University of Pennsylvania, and they categorized how much load was on the Achilles tendon during different exercises. Some researchers in Switzerland looked at the stress and load on the Achilles tendon with different speeds of walking. And then some researchers in the UK, they looked at Achilles tendon loads specifically in runners at different speeds. And when we take the research from these different studies, we can plot a spectrum. And it would start at the very low end for load on the Achilles tendon with a body weight calf raise. So we're standing on the edge of a step, we're not holding any weight, and we're just doing calf raises, going up and down. The load experienced by the Achilles tendon during that activity will be about 0.5 times our body weight. Surprisingly, if we were to just go for a walk, the load on the Achilles tendon is anywhere from 2 to 4 times our body weight, which is really quite high when you think about it. And this is why the Achilles tendon is the biggest and strongest tendon in the human body, because it needs to be, because we walk on two legs. If we start to run at a slow pace, the load on the Achilles tendon would increase to about 4 times our body weight. And if we were to do a heavy calf raise, so that would be, again, standing on the edge of a step, but this time holding a dumbbell, maybe 20 or 30 pounds, standing on one leg, going up and down, the load on the Achilles tendon would actually be about 5 times our body weight, so higher than what it is when we're running slowly. And this is why those heavy calf raises work very well for a lot of people who just have pain in their Achilles with activities of daily living, walking and moving around. They load the Achilles tendon and it gets stronger because the load when they're doing the exercises is about 5 times their body weight. And when they're walking around and just being normal, it's only about 4 times their body weight. So they can condition the tendon to tolerate that load by making it stronger and more resilient. But there's 2 reasons that this doesn't work so well for runners. One is that when we run faster, the load in the Achilles tendon increases. So if we're running at tempo pace, threshold pace, that would be your 10K race pace or your 5K race pace, then the load in the Achilles tendon goes up closer to 7 or 8 times our body weight, which is really quite a bit higher than it would be when we're doing those exercises like heavy calf raises as directed by our physio. Then we try and do a tempo run on that tendon. It hasn't been prepared for that load and it can't tolerate it. And actually the loads on the Achilles tendon may even get higher, 8, 9, 10, maybe 11 or 12 times our body weight when we're doing sprinting exercises or hill climbs, hill sprints, and these kind of super hard, fast workouts. So a lot of people will do fine with conventional rehab focused on strengthening the calf and Achilles tendon just for walking around. And runners may even be able to run at relatively slow speeds if they just do that part of the rehab. Where they'll find more difficulty is if they try and run faster. That's when the Achilles will not have the resilience and the strength to tolerate that stress and the pain will come back. But it gets worse. This is only half the problem. And this is half of what is missing from the rehab. And the key to understanding why your Achilles rehab failed if you're a runner comes down to one word: reps. Let's say that you're a runner and you go and see your physio, and your physio is really good. And there's a lot of good physios out there, and they get you to do a really good comprehensive rehab program. And they start you off with lighter calf raises. They get you doing them every second day. They build up until you're doing really heavy calf raises, let's say 3 times a week. They also know that the load on the Achilles tendon is not high enough with just the calf raises, so they get you to do bouncing exercises, jumping, hopping, and other such things that'll put a stress on the Achilles tendon more in the 6 to 10 times your body weight range, which is going to help prepare it for faster speeds of running. Great, good job. The problem is we take this very comprehensive rehab program, which is much better, what I've described there, than what most runners actually experience. But they do that with their physio, build up for 2 or 3 months. Look at the reps they did. Each session, let's say 3 times a week. Maybe if they were really good, they built up to 5 sets of 5 with a really heavy weight. So they were maybe using 40 or 50 pound dumbbells or even heavier. 5 sets of 5 would be 25 reps. Let's say they did some pogo jumps and some hopping drills. There's more reps in those exercises. So by the time they've done 3 sets of, say, 60 reps of pogo hops and, 5 sets of 10 hops. So this would be a pretty comprehensive program. They've maybe done 200 or 300 reps on that tendon. Then if they would go to a half-hour run, they're going to take 2,500 steps. It's 2,500 reps, 1,250 on the single leg. It is orders of magnitude more volume, more reps when you run than it is when you do rehab exercises. The only thing that can prepare your tendon for the volume of reps it will experience when you're running is running. And this is why running is the rehab. And I don't mean do the rehab program, do your calf raises, do your pogo hops, do your jumping exercises, and then start running, which is the error that most runners make and most rehab professionals make. It's make the running the rehab from the start. From the moment you start loading the Achilles tendon, doing heavy single leg calf raises and doing pogo and other plyometric exercises, start running, or at least preparing for running. Then it needs to be dosed very specifically depending on the irritability of the tendon pain. You can't put too much stress on it with running, if it's flaring it up. So you have to find the right dose. So we might do something like, okay, 4 times this week, you're going to go for a 30-minute walk. And during that walk, you're going to have 6 bouts of 30 seconds running. And that is your loading dose for using running as the rehab for this week. We're going to see how your tendon responds. And then next week, based on how it responded, we're either going to give you less, more, or the same running. We're going to review that every week, review your progress. And then we're going to titrate the progression based on how the tendon is responding and adapting. This kind of very specific, progressive, and adaptive approach is 100% necessary if you want to rehabilitate the tendon to the level where it can do full training with high volume, with intervals, with hill sprints, with tempo and threshold workouts. If you want to get to that level, you have to get there progressively by using running as the rehab, not just doing rehab exercises. So if your Achilles rehab failed, it's probably not that you were doing the wrong thing. It wasn't incorrect. It was just incomplete. We must add running as the rehab in a very specific way in order to get the adaptation out of the tendon that we need to build the tolerance to running. So if you want to see how this works in practice, click the link in the description or on the screen right now to watch an episode where I go through exactly how to do this in a real life example.